So before we get right into part 26, final replying to old comments, I want to bring up an aspect about this whole comedy festival in Saudi Arabia that everyone seems to be missing. At least I haven't seen it tackled. I've seen thousands of comments criticizing the comedians for performing there, and I am not here to defend any of the comedians or the country of Saudi Arabia, but simply to point out what every one of them seems to be missing, which is a solution to the problems that they are criticizing. Because it is pertinent to this video and the comments that we're going to get to later on, which have nothing to do with the comedy festival, but it's the same topic. Because I see zinger after zinger calling the comedians for performing for the family hypocrites as the criticism goes. They will complain about free speech being a problem in the Western world, but then they will go over and perform for a big chunk of change for the royal family that allegedly executes journalists for what they say, which is as far away from free speech as you can get, but they're getting paid, so they'll take that money and they'll ignore everything they said about free speech. They're being called hypocrites for doing such. Dave Chappelle got a lot of flack for mentioning the horrible history of slavery in America in almost every time he's made a live performance in the last 20 years. And yet he will go over and perform and say and brag about his free speech that he has in Saudi Arabia, where allegedly they have modern day slavery. I say allegedly because I haven't done a deep dive into any of this stuff. I'm the target audience for them actually, because I'm going by, they're trying to grab the casual viewer with images. So that's what I'm responding to. And Dave Chappelle would bragged about having more free speech in Saudi Arabia when the country actually has modern day slavery. So that's the criticism. And what I'm failing to hear in any of these criticisms, and I'm not defending again the comedians, I don't know why any of them individually accepted the offer to perform there. However, the solution that no one has mentioned in any of these criticisms, and that's why it's kind of distressing to me to see a chunk of people fail to realize that while they're calling these comedians hypocrites, they are also being hypocritical, because the solution is, it was already proven by the WWE, because they started their deal of putting on live performances in Saudi Arabia in 2018. And if you look at their progression since then, the first show, again, I didn't see any of these shows. I've only seen clips. I kind of follow wrestling, but again, I'm going by the impressions that I got from seeing clips and what I saw that was written about them, the results. So no women were allowed to perform at the first WWE show in Saudi Arabia. And from what I gleaned, there didn't seem to be any women in the audience. So as a Western civilian, that doesn't look very appealing to me to want to go over there, which is their goal, is to draw in people from around the world. Well, if I can't bring my female significant other with me, I'm not going to go. However, that was the first show. They have a 10-year contract with the WWE to perform over there. And I don't know if it was within a few shows or maybe the next show, maybe a year later, women were allowed to perform in Saudi Arabia at the WWE show. But they had to be covered, they had to have every inch of skin covered except for their face. So there was some progress there. Eventually, there seemed to be, I was starting to notice at least, women in the audience, whereas I didn't at the earlier shows. And I think, at least, you can correct me if I'm wrong here by looking it up yourself, but it seems to be that if it hasn't happened yet, at least it's going that way. They are now allowing the women who perform at the WWE shows in Saudi Arabia to just have their asses hanging out the way they would over here in the Western world. I actually don't like how scantily they dress, the women wrestlers in the Western world. I think it's too distracting from what they're doing. They're supposed to be simulating combat. It's hard to feel sympathy for the beating they're taking when you see their bare ass jiggling in the ring. You know what I mean? But more power to them. They should have the freedom to do that if they want to. And that's where this is going, is that the younger generations who saw this progression of the WWE shows over the years in Saudi Arabia, who, by the way, WWE still gets criticism for that, the same way that the comedians who performed the show recently are being criticized. WWE's been facing that kind of criticism since 2018 when they first made the deal, because that was shortly after that one journalist was executed for what he said, which is terrible. Obviously, I feel stupid saying that. But the solution is to cooperate with the corruption, which is what WWE is showing the positive results of, because in 2018, there weren't allowed to be women at the show. And almost 10 years later, women are allowed to have their asses hanging out in the ring while women and children watch in the audience. Now, that doesn't unmurder the journalist. It doesn't free any of the slaves directly. However, you got to imagine that the younger generations watching these shows in Saudi Arabia, they're going to come away with impressions of why can't we, express ourselves creatively the same way? Why are they allowed to do it, but we can't? And I'm not saying that Western world, that's one of the things I dislike the least, is how we say we're going to westernize the rest of the world. I think people should be allowed to live the way they want, as long as they're not impeding on anyone else's ability to live. So if they want to have the whatever, be completely covered, the stuff they do over there. But they should also have the choice to do something else if they want to. But that's, at least I'm playing devil's advocate here. I haven't given it enough thought to commit to one side or the other. Because what I'm doing is I'm pointing out that the comedians who went over there, whether they're doing it knowingly or not, just like WWE going over there, they are becoming the solution to the problems that the people criticizing them going over there and performing these shows for a corrupt royal family who executes journalists and allegedly, I keep saying allegedly because I don't know, because it executes journalists and has modern day slavery. Going over there and performing for them and giving the people a taste of a different lifestyle, a different civilization, a different set of values, that opens the door to slow incremental changes over time, so that those younger generations who saw it when they were kids, they might ascend into positions of influence later on. I know it's like a royal family, I've heard, where, it just goes from father to son, maybe. So if that is the case, there's still going to be unrelated people in positions of influence. And they might say, maybe we shouldn't execute this journalist because he's kind of like, he's just speaking his mind. He's like those wrestlers. Remember, they went in the ring and they did those interviews where they were speaking their mind? He kind of reminds me of them. He has the same personality. And maybe that gets through, the childhood memory sticks to now, and the guy goes, yeah, well, maybe we should save the acid bath for someone more deserving. And then a journalist is spared execution. And that's just the first step. I know I'm simplifying it to a point that's probably easy to ridicule right now, but it's slow incremental steps, the same way that the WWE since 2018 has made slow incremental steps, slowly cooperating. It's not like a virus taking over, it's just a cooperation. They're meeting in the middle. WWE agreed to do shows over there, but they had to follow some rules. These comedians from the West agreed to do shows over there, but they had to follow some rules the first time. Maybe that will slowly change over the years if the comedy show keeps coming back every year. And maybe excuse me, sick for weeks now. Maybe the younger generations who will eventually get into positions of influence will have those seeds from their childhood to make positive changes for human rights, not necessarily change their belief system or their way of life. They can do whatever they want, but for universal human rights. And I think a lot of the critics are young or just inexperienced or at least underdeveloped mentally because they're not realizing that they are also perpetrators of the very things that they are criticizing in the comedians and the wrestling. Not only are they ignoring everything I just said about how this is a long-term solution, it can be, whether the intention is there or not, this can be a long-term solution. That while the leaders of the corporations are trying to get worldwide grasp, they could actually, us down here below, the people they're trying to play like puppets, we can all make connections through these worldwide shows with each other and realize we should all be on the same team. And that's how you eliminate, by popular demand, eliminate some of the corruption at the top. And so where the critics fail to see their own hypocrisies of these shows, because I understand the feelings. I understand the initial gut wrench feeling is, that journalist is still murdered. Those people are still slaves. The shows did nothing. It's not right. Why would you support that? It's the same way that interrogators have to get on the good side of the criminal to get them to confess and then eventually go to jail. True crime fans should understand that perfectly. It's that same mentality. You cooperate with them. You give them an open door. If you just allow this a little bit, then maybe we'll give you a little of this. You make deals. You have to cooperate with the corruption in order to get rid of the corruption. So just to wrap up, 12 minutes on this. To wrap up, it's going to take a while, but the critics of these shows are just as big a hypocrites as they claim the people they're criticizing are. Because while they're saying you shouldn't support a regime that executes people for what they say or has modern day slavery, the people writing those comments are sitting in clothes that were sewn together by child labor, kids working 14 hours a day for 3 cents a month or whatever it is, less standards than are in the Western world. They're typing their comments on a phone that was put together by somebody who probably wants to go up and jump off the roof because their life is so miserable working for this company that puts together phones. They are contributing to the problem, being actually greater hypocrites because they're not actually offering any solutions. They're just contributing to the problem with no solutions. At least WWE and the comedians who did the comedy festival, they are contributing to a solution, even if they are personally hypocrites. So I just wanted everybody, like I'm speaking for everybody on this channel. I just hadn't heard anybody else put that out there, so I wanted to. How about that? Does that sound good enough? So, speaking of cooperating to get somebody to undermine their own corruption, finally replying to old comments. I'm on to the comment section of His Master Plan Revealed Part 11, where the interrogators have aligned themselves with the criminal, and a lot of people have made comments on that process because there's another example, much like WWE instituting incremental changes. Graham and Tammy instituted changes by aligning themselves with a murderer of his pregnant wife and 2 children. You might say, oh, actually, a lot of people did say that. They said, I can't stand how they pretend to be his friend and laugh at his jokes. Well, it worked. It worked. If they just went in there immediately like, you piece of shit, we know you did it, he'd be a free man probably. Casey Anthony's free. So it could happen. And she looked guiltier than Chris. But Chris Watts, because he was, the interrogators aligned themselves with him and they got him to undermine his own corruption. And now he's spending the rest of his life where he belongs, in a bathroom in the prison. So, man, do I have any time left for these comments? All right, we can get a couple in. Part 11, his master plan revealed. This comment from a Naz575. Hi, Michael. Could you help me, please? I have often wondered why did the cadaver dogs not pick up the scent of the dead body of Shanann? Like I said before, I believe the girls were killed and disposed of at the site earlier on Sunday, but he waited up, for Shanann to kill her. I am baffled. Based on all the evidence that I've seen, I don't know how you drew that conclusion. I don't know why the cadaver dogs did not pick up the scent of the dead body of Shanann, because based on all the evidence, she seemed to be dead in the house. I don't know why you believe the girls were killed and disposed of on Sunday. Yeah, you're going to have to just bring up the evidence. I mean, I've covered that endlessly. I'd just be repeating myself at this point of why it happened differently than that. I've gone over many of the details, and I think it's your turn to point out why you believe that. You said you've said it before, but I didn't catch that in any of the previous comments unless they were deleted. But Anaz575 goes on to say the best justice for Shanann and her children is to put him alive in one of those petrol tanks. I would happily do it, and I am a woman. Shame is not allowed. Yeah, I know there's that whole thing of, wow, you don't want to become the evil that you're against, which kind of relates to the first 14 minutes of this video. However, I understand the urge perfectly to want to do that. I remember watching the video of him just lying, pretending to be funny, trying to charm the interrogators, laughing, he's relaxed, while pretending to be concerned. And I just remember having this urge to, I wish I could point a gun and shoot him through the screen. It's like, I wish I could smash his face with a hammer, but it looks like God already did that for me. With that, shovel in the snow, shovel in the snow. It's got a scoop shovel for a face. But anyway, I understand the urge, but one must be careful not to succumb to the urge, lest one become the monster themselves. And yeah, you know that stuff. Okay, up next is Shay Carson. There's more people that don't believe that she was part of it than do, talking about the mistress being involved in the murders. The ones that do believe it are just always yapping and commenting on it, all with the exact same thing. She killed the kids because he couldn't, the red car, the ping that morning, blah, blah. Chris is a total scumbag. He didn't care about the kids. He could and did kill them. I think the people want to see something in that video, red car, WTV. I didn't see that. Now, the ping that morning, I think she remembered hearing the TV when they talked the night before, because she was wondering, okay, he's up, and when we have talked before, I never heard the TV. He doesn't have a TV downstairs where he sleeps, so he must be upstairs waiting for her. Worried they were going to get back together. So she went to see what time he left the house that morning. When she got there, he had already left. So she called him to see if his truck was in the garage, and he was lying about it. She was checking on him. Also, I believe that most people that believe that theory, well, most don't have a good idea about liars, in parentheses, but they most likely had an important man in their lives, most likely when young, that they didn't want to believe did something bad. It's a good point. A lot of our experiences when we're young plant seeds in our brains that, the root is still down there. Even after we try to pick the plant out, we still have the root down there. But continuing on, could be a woman, most likely a man. They just want to blame someone other than the man, and they still hold on to this. It was not him, it was her fault. Shay Carson was saying at the end there is like their point of view. With all of that, I would say that's all valid. And I would simply add that I think people want her because she is so guilty in all of her interviews and she comes off as such a rotten person. They want her to be found guilty of something. Now, I wouldn't want to go through, I would say that she did get kind of a punishment with the way the public perception treated her because she had to go into hiding and just disappear as far as anyone knows every time it's brought up. I mean, I'm not doing any investigations on it, but every time it's brought up, they just say she's gone, she vanished, no one knows. Does she have a different name? Is she still visiting Chris? No one knows. So I can't imagine. Maybe she must have gone into the witness protection program, and that doesn't sound like the most prosperous, thriving type of lifestyle to have. So I don't know what she's doing, but I imagine that it was some kind of justice for the amount that she played. Like even if it was manipulations, she's uh, she's paying for those manipulations. But like Shay Carson said there, it was still Chris who did the crime, based on all the evidence that's been covered endlessly. And I think, yeah, we're gonna have to end it there. Had a late morning, so this was part 26, and I will see you in part 27. Goodbye.